Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to another episode of Footprints. I am your host, Mr. Davis. I'm an educator at Beverly High School, and joining me today on the podcast on Footprints is a guy who is, like me, a basketball fanatic. And we're going to say hello and welcome to the show, Patrick Bugler. Right?
You got it.
I got it indeed.
Thanks for having me on, Tony.
Patrick is an assistant varsity basketball coach at Gordon College, and we're going to talk a little bit about Patrick's journey and who imprinted some footprints on him. Right away, Patrick, I'm going to ask you a question that I usually ask all my guests right in the beginning. Tell us something about yourself that nobody knows.
I would say a lot of people know I'm a hard worker, and then as I've become a coach at the college level, I think people don't realize how much that consumes you. And so I would say that, you know, my social life, my family life, all of it is impacted because that the job and how much work I put in comes first. And, you know, family always comes first, and I'm still around my family a lot and around my friends as much as I can be, but the priority for me is putting in the work in my craft, and it's easier when you love something that you do.
No question, and that's the beauty of Footprints, because when we're impacted by our passion, we can move that forward effortlessly. Let's think about this. You're one of 5 kids.
Yep.
You're the middle guy, like myself. Well, I don't know if I'm middle. I guess I would be. I have an older brother, then it's me, then I have a younger sister and a younger brother, so I guess me and my sister were kind of in the middle. Where do you fall in the kids?
So I'm the middle child, but I am the oldest boy in my family.
Oldest boy. So you have how many brothers?
So I have 2 younger brothers, 2 older sisters.
Okay.
We're all within pretty much a year of each other. So definitely grew up in a fun family household, and at times it was crazy.
Okay.
But a good crazy. We all love each other, and I actually have an older sister right now who's expected and due in a month from now.
Oh, wow. So you're going to be an uncle soon.
I'm going to be an uncle.
How about that?
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations.
I appreciate it.
Uncle Pat.
She's a teacher just like yourself. So.
Oh, I appreciate that. Well, you know what? We do what we can to impact our students and everybody that comes in contact with us. So education is where it's at for me. You have a dog named Macy.
I do.
What type of dog?
She's a mini golden doodle.
Okay, mini golden doodle.
And she is, I think she's the favorite sibling in the Bugler family.
I like it.
No one's got a problem with Macy.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I have the same situation in my family. So I have 7 children. All my children are grown, but my wife and I decided to get a puppy 9 months ago. So we have a little Shih Tzu puppy because my daughter Jeanette actually had like purebred Shih Tzu puppies. So we got little Bear. He looks like a bear and walks like a bear, but he's tiny. Yeah, we love that. Yes, indeed. Do you have any sort of hobbies that you do other than basketball?
I would say that, you know, when I have the time to start a Netflix series or, you know, get a show that I could get really into, especially when I was in college and had a little more free time, I would always try to find a series. And meanwhile, I'm binge watching 5 seasons in a 2 weeks time period. So
sounds familiar.
I would say I could get really into a TV series, and then just hanging out with friends. You know, I have a good group of friends back from my hometown, and whenever I can get together with them, that's something I love to do.
No doubt. That's the same with me. I'm a binge. I like Will Trent, by the way. That's one of my favorite shows I just discovered.
Okay. I haven't heard of that one.
It's on Hulu, and it's awesome.
There's only so many subscriptions that you can get. So I'm Netflix right now. HBO's got one that I've been watching. So
Prime Video's good. They got that Reacher series. I don't know if you know that.
I know the series. I haven't seen it though.
Yeah, really good stuff. I enjoy it. Let's talk a little bit about some coaching philosophies in your role as far as being a coach at Gordon College. So as an assistant coach at Gordon, how has your role sort of evolved over time?
So this was my first year at Gordon. I took the job in August. And when I got the job, you know, Coach Murphy, who's the head coach, he's been there for 16 years. So
wow,
he's been at Gordon for a while. He's had a lot of winning programs, and I didn't know exactly what to expect. I knew that, being a former college player myself and just kind of coming out of the college basketball world, that I was very good with skills training. That was something I've always been comfortable with. I put in a lot of work as a player myself, but I've also been training kids locally since I was in high school.
That sounds familiar. Now, what college did you go to, Pat?
So I started off at Clark University. I played a couple seasons at Clark, and I ended up transferring to Salem State to play for Coach Harvey.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I definitely, loved my experience at Salem State. At Clark, I went through a lot of injuries, so it was an up and down 2 years at Clark, but I made a lot of good friends out of it and, still had a great experience.
Awesome. Well, that's what you want. You always want to be able to do that, have a great experience no matter what we're doing, right? How would you describe your coaching philosophy, and how does it sort of complement the head coaches as well?
Well, it's funny because when you're going out recruiting, you know what positional needs that your team needs to find. You might have a really strong 2 and 3 guard and they're sophomores on your team and you can grow with them. You know that that's not your priority in that recruiting class, and so you have to lock into a point guard or a forward. So that's one thing, and the talent and the way we play, at the Division III level, you can't get greedy and say he needs to fit this exact skill set.
Exactly.
If he's good enough to play Division III basketball and he's got the talent, then we're going to give him a fair look, and not try to fit him to the way we play, but adapt to the strengths of our players and who we get. But the number 1 and 2 things I look for when I'm recruiting is how hard is that kid playing, and is he coachable?
Yes.
Those are 2 things I look for, because you could have all the talent in the world, but if you're not coachable or if you don't have a motor on the court, those are 2 things that it's really hard to grow a player and develop them if they're not coachable in the first place.
You got that
or if
right.
they don't have that motor. It's
No
something
question.
that's kind of instilled in people throughout their youth. And by the time they get to college, it can be harder to reverse and to change.
Definitely, without a doubt. Myself, I played a little college basketball at Emerson, and it was a little different back in the early 80s, as far as that goes. But you're right. You have to be adaptable, and you have to be able to adjust your game. And, sometimes it's important to be able to understand we're all going in the same direction, and hopefully we can pull in that direction and have some success doing it. And that's what it's about. What do you think the biggest challenges of being an assistant coach versus being a head coach?
I would say the toughest part about being an assistant coach is, I would say, the recruiting journey and what you have to go through as a young assistant college coach. I was in Foxborough last Friday, and the Saturday after I'm in Connecticut, looking at different players and going to different events. And so the recruiting aspect of college coaching is definitely something that you have to love what you do, because you're putting in these hours. And maybe you go down to Connecticut and the kid is a great player, and a week later he tells you he's not interested in Gordon. So there's always the struggles behind finding the right fit for your school and the right fit for your team, and you have to be able to take chances and put in the work.
So I can concur with what you just said, because on a personal level, I try to appreciate everything, right? But expect nothing, right? So when you're going in recruiting, right, you want to appreciate that person's talent, you want to appreciate that person as a player, but you don't really expect that they might fit your program, because it depends on that particular person. So I like what Kobe Bryant said, and he said, the most important thing is to try and inspire people so that they can be great in whatever they want to do. So one of the biggest things that I think I try to do every day is appreciate where I am and where I've come from and what I have, and I try to pay it forward in some way. I'll tell you, this morning I was in the gym at 5 a.m. with one of the recruits that we have coming to Pingree. And it was a joy just to be in the gym. It's like my sanctuary. I love going there. And when you love something so much and you put so much time into it, right, it never seems like work. My dad always said that to me. He said, you have to get to do something as opposed to have to do something, because if you get to do it, it's so much more fun than having to do it, right? And so that's the difference between get to and have to, and I love it, and he's 100% correct.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Let's talk about a little bit player development and team culture. So how would you say you really help players develop on and off the court as an assistant coach at Gordon?
On the court, I offer a lot of individual work once our season begins. At the D3 level, we're not allowed to work with our players until the first day of preseason.
Okay.
So that makes it a little bit different than Division I, who can pretty much work with their guys all year long.
Yeah. That's
so we have a very finite window where I offer individual workouts. My players can text me any time of the day, any time of the night, and I'll go find a hoop to go and make them better and help them with their craft. And I think it really depends on the player that I'm working with. If I'm going to break up into small group workouts with my players, I'll break them up into positional groups. Is he a point guard? Is he a 2 or 3? Is he a 4 or 5? And so in those small group workouts, I can focus on what skill sets are important for our team to learn.
Yeah.
And in the off season, I want you to get better at your weaknesses and focus on a weakness that you can get better at for the following year. But since we're working with these players in season, I want to focus on the strengths that they can bring to our team this year and what they can really provide right now. And so
I like that.
I would say a big part of my team skill work, because we do some team skill work in practice as well, is fundamentals.
Yeah.
Shot fakes, learning how to catch and rip without waiting for the closeout to come and meet you, getting a really good jab step and going the other way, and playing off of 2 feet in the paint.
2 feet, yeah,
so
for sure.
There's a lot of fundamentals, and I was a player that I was undersized, so I had to have a variety of different ways to finish around the rim. So when I'm talking to a player about playing off of 2 feet, all of a sudden they look at me and they're like, I was taught the jump stop when I was in 3rd grade. Well, you were taught that for a reason, because now you have a pivot foot, and if there's a bigger defender who you can't finish around, you haven't left your feet. You can still pass out of it. You can still shot fake and step through.
100%.
So there's a lot of very good things that build from the fundamentals, and you can get more creative with players that show that they have the foundation. No question. And fundamentals is where it's at in terms of basketball. If you can build your game around that, and a lot of kids don't understand that everybody wants to jack up threes like Curry, and then they want to blame Curry because they can't make it. Yep.
They don't understand. He's been doing that forever, and he's put the work in, right? And so that's where it's at. You're right. Fundamentals for any player playing off 2 in the paint is really, really huge. I love doing that and teaching that as well. So tell me, what are some of the key attributes you think that you look for when you're recruiting players to Gordon's program?
Well, I always talk to players, because usually it starts off with I see a highlight tape somewhere. And highlight tapes are great because they catch my attention. They're 4 or 5 minute videos of what they do well on the court, and give a little bit of insight into, hey, maybe this player is worth having a phone call with. But those 5 minutes of highlights are their best plays from that season.
Right.
So you can only learn so much from that. I need to see full game footage, and the more and more we have conversations, the more I can find out kind of what type of player, what type of kid you are,
for sure,
and how you could be a fit for our basketball program, but also for our school, because at the Division III level, there's very few players that go past D3 and play professional basketball. It's pretty rare at our school, our level, and so I like to see, like, hey, I explain to them that, what are you interested in studying at Gordon? What would your intended major be? And do we have that major? Could it fit you well? What does the social life at Gordon look like? Explain to them that we're also a Christian school, which makes it different. That's something I mentioned in the very first phone call. Because for some students, it's a very positive thing. They grew up in a Christian environment, and it could be something that they're looking for, seeking out to go to school and play basketball and be at a Christian college.
No question.
And then for others, it's not for them, but I want to know that if it's not for them.
Oh, no question. So, so what's the team culture like? It's like at Gordon, like how do you like reinforce that? Is it kind of like all for one, one for all, like the Three Musketeers, kind of like that.
You know, that's the coach's dream. Every day we have to work and be intentional on our culture. When I first took the job in August, Coach Murphy told me that the biggest thing that he wants to make sure that's his top priority this year is the culture. He actually created a list of different important culture values and had the players vote on it. And they picked their top 10, you know, most important things that are going to be voted on by the players. So you guys are holding each other accountable because you guys are the ones that picked them.
I like it.
So we had a list hanging up in our locker room of 10 cultural values that should be what Gordon basketball is all about.
I love it.
So it's a very important piece of what we're building at Gordon. And, you know, every recruiting class that we're talking to also knows about those cultures that we're talking about.
So now, having said that, tell me about a person or a player you've recruited, and how have you left those footprints on that particular player that came to your program?
So because this is my first recruiting class at Gordon coming in the spring, it's still very, you know, it's funny because it's the spring, but it's still somewhat early on with the way that college basketball is now moving in terms of recruiting. You know, I went to a lot of high school games this past year and watched a lot of good local recruits, recruits that were in the New England area and even on the North Shore.
For sure.
And I always try to have a conversation with them and talk to them about how they could maybe fit our program, but also I like to be transparent in my recruiting. You know, it's a lot of kids' college. It's their dream to play college basketball, just like it was mine.
Right.
And so my transparency could be saying things that are difficult. You know, you're someone that we're interested in, but you're not at the top of our list right now, and we have to wait to hear from someone else that we have an offer out to.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, listen, you gotta shoot from the hip. You gotta tell them exactly how it is. At least that way they know out front, you know, all right, now I've got to maybe ramp it up a little bit. I gotta get it in gear and really make these guys want me, right? And I gotta make sure I do all my due diligence and put in all my work so I give myself the best chance. That's what it's about, really. You know what I mean? Absolutely. So walk us through, like, Patch, a typical game day preparation routine for you, and then sort of what are your responsibilities for that?
So if you take it back to the day before the game, is we're doing the scouting report with the guys. You know, we're watching film with them. I'm responsible for breaking down the tendencies of the other team. So the tendencies for me, it starts off with their best players' player tendencies. So I actually put 2 or 3 clips of their top 5, maybe top 7 rotational guys, and I give the players a little bit of idea of that individual and what he likes to do on the court.
Exactly.
And so we start with that, and then we get into some offensive, you know, whether it's a set or whether it's a tendency, and I show them those clips as well, and we talk about how we want to guard those actions, and even go into their defense, especially if they have a, you know, maybe they run 2-3 or they're really high up in the passing lanes. You know, we want our guys to be very well prepared. So we watch video, and the video is broken down by me. They're not watching full games and sitting there for 2 hours. You know, they're in the film room with me for 20 minutes. And then while they're sitting through the film room, they also have a paper scout in front of them with the player tendencies on them and, you know, a picture of them, what their stats look like. And that way our players are prepared going into game day. So it really is, for the players, the day before the game, where they're focused on what we're going to do against this upcoming opponent. Whereas for me, it's the 3 days before that and making sure that I'm prepared. You know, I'm not just watching 20 minutes of a game and saying this is what this team likes to do. I'm trying to consume as much, you know, full game footage as possible. Wow.
That is a mouthful right there.
It definitely feels like it too. Yeah.
Yes, indeed, without a doubt. Well, I always say, you know, opportunities are like sunrises, right? If you wait too long, you could miss it, right? And so when you're recruiting kids, that's what you want to do. You want to go out there right away, and when you see a kid, you're like, oh, maybe he will fit our program. So you want to go out and check him out. And that's a great routine, by the way, as you're walking through and getting game preparation too. So that's amazing.
It's made me a better coach too, because I'm looking at what other coaches are doing in our conference and seeing what they do well. And I learned so much from my head coach and take what he does well with our program.
Right.
But I also can learn from other guys as well and just continue to learn and consume as much as possible.
I love it. I love it. So tell me, what's the most memorable game you've coached in and why?
So the most memorable game I coached in was a loss.
That's okay.
Which it was to Endicott College, and it was we play them twice. They're in our conference.
Mm-hmm.
The first time we played those guys, we were up 10 with 5 minutes left, and we let the lead slip away. And they come down the court down 2 points. We make a foul, and they get an and one layup, and they win the game. Now the second time we play them, it's at our place.
Mm-hmm.
It's the biggest crowd we've had all year. Crosstown rivals, and my brother has been a part of the Endicott basketball program as a student manager for 4 years, so I also get to go up against my brother.
Wow. How cool is that?
It's very cool. And, I didn't speak to him for the next, 24 hours after we lost again. But we came out, we were down 20 at halftime in that second game. And, our guys knew that we can compete with Endicott, even though they're a top team in the conference.
Mm-hmm.
And, we laid into them a little bit at halftime. We started slow. We didn't have the right energy and the right mindset, the right focus. So we laid into them a little bit at halftime, made some adjustments, and we get the game back to 2 points with the last minute left and gave ourselves a chance to win. Unfortunately, it didn't go our way again, and Endicott got the best of Gordon this year. But those 2 games were very memorable in my mind because Endicott is one of those teams in our conference that always are at the top.
Mm-hmm.
And, for the past couple of years, Gordon has been towards the bottom of the conference.
Right.
And knowing that we've competed very closely with them, gives our guys some perspective. Like, we're not that far away, but there's some little things that we need to clean up in order to get to their,
no question.
their position.
No question. Wow. Well, I have a memorable story, too, in a loss. For those of you who don't know, I played high school basketball against Patrick Ewing. Many years ago.
At Cambridge, right?
And he played at Cambridge, and I played at Weymouth South High School, long time ago. And we lost. We were up big, and I had 46 points in the game. I'll say that again.
That's not bad.
I had 46 points in the game.
I don't think I ever scored 46 points in a real game.
It was pretty good. It was pretty good, but we lost by 52. Next, that was what it was. They really got at us pretty good, but that's okay. What's interesting about it, though, you always learn something from a loss. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm always learning what I could do better, what we should have done. Situational basketball is very big with me. Mm-hmm. I've been coaching basketball now for like 30-plus years. And so for me, coaching AAU and also a high school gives me like really a different perspective on the game because it's so different now than when I played it. Right, everybody's a jump shooter and a dribbler from your 1 to your 5, and that wasn't the case when I played. It was like dump the ball into the big man, let him go to work, and then you kind of live off that. That's how I played basketball, and AAU, quite frankly, wasn't a thing when I was like younger. It didn't start getting really big club basketball till I'd probably say maybe 20, 25 years ago, maybe. It started coming around. And to be on an AAU basketball team, you had to be the best player, right? And now that's not the case. You know what I mean? There's a lot of programs out there that, quite frankly, are not up to snuff in terms of teaching the game. It's more of a money grab for them. So when I'm sitting with a coach who has passion like me and has those footprints of really impacting players in the right way, I really enjoy having these conversations, Pat. And it's been great for me. Couple things. What's one funny or crazy moment you've experienced on the sidelines?
Well, there's always things as a coach that you can't see what goes on because you're so focused in the game. But as a player, taking it back to a player on the sidelines, there's definitely been things where I've been towards the middle to the end of the bench and, you're with those guys who are maybe not playing in the game and you kind of see the different levels of focus because there are players like myself that were sitting at the end of the bench at one point and they were ready for their name to be called and they'd be ready to go right away. One thing that I'm now experiencing as a coach is players that in those last 3-4 minutes of a game, if you're up big or down big and they haven't played all game, you would think that, hey, if we called your name, this could be an opportunity for you to get minutes and for you to, not only just be able to step on the floor, but get some real college minutes and get some development, something out of it. There are certainly more players now than even when I was a player 5 years ago that don't want to go in those situations.
Are you kidding me?
I think
I'm going in.
They don't want to go in because it's like embarrassed. They think it's an embarrassment thing. Like, oh, he's playing me the last 5 minutes because it's a blowout or because we're getting blown out. In reality, it's to try to take advantage of every opportunity you get to step on the floor.
No question.
And so to me, that's funny.
Yeah.
And it also makes me very frustrated because I knew I was that player at the end of the bench at some points in my career in college where I was dying for my name to get called.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, if you have that passion and you want your name to be called, you got to, as they say, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready, right? And once they call your name, boom, you're ready to go, and you hit the floor running, and you're going to have a great time. And it shouldn't matter if you play 5 minutes or 20 minutes, right? You're part of a team, and you're part of that culture, and you're part of something bigger than yourself. So as a player on the end of the bench, you should realize that that's the culture you're trying to build, and that's what you want to take out of that. You know what I mean? What's your go-to pregame pump-up song?
I'm like an early 2000, mid 2000 rap. So
I like it. I like it already.
For me, I'll throw on like a graduation Kanye album.
Okay, all right.
Maybe I'll go to a little Kendrick Lamar. And, for me, it's J. Cole, Kendrick Lamar, Kanye. And
I like it.
Those three are like my three favorite rap artists that are my go-to pregame.
Love Kanye West. The College Dropout, I think, was probably one of the best albums he came out with. That's the first one he had.
Yep.
That's my favorite of all his albums. Usually the original is the best.
Yep. Yeah, his first 4 or 5 albums, I could listen to those all day.
They were pretty good. Pat, where do you see yourself in maybe the next 5 or 10 years? And do you have any aspirations of maybe becoming a head coach at some point?
Yeah, I would say my goal is definitely to be a head coach one day. The Division III level is something that even as an assistant coach, you need to work your way into being considered a head coaching candidate. And I'm still very early on in this process. I'm 2 years into coaching at the college level. And so I know that it's going to take some time and to continue to make the right connections. And, it's just like the business world, basketball is about relationships too.
No question.
It's what's your basketball level IQ and what can you bring to this team, but it's also who do you know and what are your connections that you've made. So my aspirations are definitely to be a Division III head coach someday. I'm 2 classes away from finishing my master's in education as well.
Nice.
So I'm going to have that in my resume at some point. And, at one point I thought maybe it was, coaching high school basketball and teaching. Since I've been involved at the college level coaching, I can't imagine me not wanting to just consumed by basketball all day long.
Of course.
It's for me, that's easy. It's not a struggle to work a lot of hours when you're just focused on basketball. So, I think that in 5 or 10 years, I'd love to be a Division III head coach and, running summer camps and being able to help the youth and, not just focusing on college players, but, having a time in the summer where I can still help and develop kids that are younger than college level kids.
No question. Are you still doing the camp you had at Marblehead?
I am. So this will be summer number 4 for me.
Okay.
So I'm very excited about it. Last summer was great. It started off with me training a whole bunch of kids in my area, a lot of individual small group lessons. And, about 4 years ago, I said to myself, why don't I try to get all these kids in one gym?
That makes sense.
If I'm on the court for 10 hours a day, maybe I could make it 4.5 with all of them together.
Yeah, no doubt.
And so it's worked out really well. I've had a lot of people that have helped me get it to where it's at. It doesn't just happen because of me. I've had a lot of people that have helped build the camp and have gotten the word out for me. And word of mouth. And if I train a kid for 2 or 3 years individually, and the kid loves coming to me, he knows he's getting better with me, and the parents feel the same way, they're much more likely to spread that word to other people. And that's the biggest part of this whole thing is if you're a good person and you also are good at what you do, people will start to come to you and start to find you.
No question. And that's the footprints that you're leaving on those kids when you're in that camp, right, when they're coming there. And it started slow, and now it's building momentum, and you're getting a bunch of kids to come to you, and you're impacting them in a positive way, which we really love. Today's Daily Wisdom, ladies and gentlemen, is about protecting your passion. Let's think about it. Passion is like the heartbeat of like what we do. It's greatness, right? It's the energy that fuels our love for the game and for love for whatever it is we're doing, and keeps us going, and we feel like sometimes the odds are a little insurmountable. You can't fake passion, ladies and gentlemen. You just can't. You can't go far without it, right? You need it. So when failure happens and looms and criticism comes about and you're exhausted and you just don't know how you can go on, think about that voice in your head, ladies and gentlemen, that reminds you that says, you started this, I'm going to finish it, right? It's the fire that refuses to really quit and let you just die. No, you're going to keep going because you love it so much, right? We lose our passion sometimes when we lose sight of what truly matters. What truly matters, most people fall in love with whatever it is they're doing, and they forget about how fun and exciting it was when they first started doing it. And I think it's more fulfilling once you have something that you're really passionate about. Somewhere along the line, though, it kind of gets buried a little bit, and your passion kind of wanes and fades, but your focus doesn't shift. You always have that same focus. You do everything to protect your passion with love in your heart, right? Remember the kid who picked up the ball? You were that kid, and I was that kid for the first time, and it was like, wow, this is really awesome. I want to play this game. How do I get better at it, right? That kid, he didn't really care about stats. He didn't care about money. He played because he loved it. He played because he held on to that passion. And when you hold on to that love and passion, no matter what it is you're doing in life, ladies and gentlemen, you're going to be able to accomplish some great things. I have one final question for you, sir. Two, actually. If you were to coach an NBA player today, in today's NBA, who would it be and why?
The easy answer is someone like Jokic, because I wouldn't have to do a whole lot as a coach because he sees the whole game himself.
Yeah.
I think I'm a big time Boston homer where it's ride or die for the Celtics. I've always been that way. So,
Me too.
I would probably have to choose someone like, Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown. I'm always going to side with the Celtics, and
yeah, no doubt.
Just watching their development and
Me too.
what the Celtics have done over the last couple of years. And I remember people used to say, hey, you got to trade either JB or JT. You got to get rid of one of them.
Yeah.
And I was always saying to myself, aren't they 24 years old and they're all-stars, and they're going to continue to get better? And
no question.
Just watching Tatum and Brown and their work ethic, and the Celtics and Brad Stevens and all the different coaches that have come through in the last few years and what they do development-wise, I would definitely, I would be a Jason Tatum guy, all day long, because he's a basketball junkie, and there's a lot of star players that basketball might not even be their favorite thing they do.
Right.
And the reality is the NBA players, some of them are so talented that it doesn't matter.
You're right, 100%.
But Jason Tatum's
your guy.
He's my guy. Seems like one of those players that just lives and breathes basketball.
No question.
So I would choose him.
Yeah, that's a good choice. Mine would be Kobe Bryant. Because I love Kobe. I love what he stood for. I love the work ethic he put in. I love the fact that he came to the league, a young guy, took the league by storm, said, I'm going to take this league and I'm going to be the best player that I can possibly be, the best version of myself, and that's what happened. And coming out of high school, that's hard to do.
Yeah, he had no fear.
No fear, and we love that. No fear. Now, if you could have dinner with anybody, dead or alive, celebrity, basketball player, anybody, who would it be and why?
That's a good one. I should have came more prepared on this subject because
That's okay.
the whole thing has been about basketball. So I'll keep it in that lane, even though it's a boring answer.
All right, go ahead.
But at the same time, if I had the chance to sit down with Brad Stevens, for me that would be a dream come true.
No question.
From being a former really good Division III player to being a young coach at Butler who brings a mid-major to a NCAA finals, to being the Celtics head coach, to being the GM that brings a championship. I would just have, so many questions for him, and I would probably get kicked out of the room in 10 minutes because I have too many questions for him.
Absolutely. Well, I can tell you from personal experience, Brad Stevens is a heck of a guy, very personable, and he would love to have that conversation and dinner with you, believe me. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I can see by the clock on the wall that it's time for us to go. Make sure you check us out on all the streaming services, Spotify, Podbean. You can find them all. Don't forget to also check us out on Channel 22 and thank our guest today, Mr. Pat Bugler, for hanging out with us today here at Footprints. And I always leave you with this question, ladies and gentlemen, and I want you to really think about it, and I'll see you next week. Who left a footprint on you? Thank you. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.